You are your child's best teacher. You know them better than anybody else. But I see the way that the school is designed. It's part of this capitalist system designed to create this like obedient worker that's just going to run on this capitalist hamster wheel. Homeschooling as an act of resistance because you are like opting out of this ignorance.
What are the hardest parts of homeschooling?
Like there are insecurities and kind of intrusive thoughts about like, am I doing the right thing? I hear this all the time. It's too much for my mental health. My anxiety is too high. Kids, I don't know what to do with them. Like, here, iPad. Be okay with the challenge. That's part of doing something that is worthwhile. People say, oh, what about the socialization?
I was literally just about to ask that.
It's kind of the point. Kids, bulk of the time that they spend in their day is with other children who are cognitively immature. Children are looking to their peers for values, for validation, for all the things that they should not be getting from their peers. I don't want them to have that strong peer influence because it's not healthy for them.
There's this term in psychology that's called the Devouring Mother.
People that have their kids pop in stories to like explain things and whatever, it's like, how present are you really for your child?
What are they understanding from you in that moment? Us chasing views and chasing numbers is what's important. I think right now there's a lot of parents that are on the fence. What kind of things can you say that would let them push for homeschooling?
Oh my God. I mean, I don't know if I should tell this story.
When it comes to our children's education, there's a lot of questions that come up. Should we put them in public school? Should we put them in private school? Should we take them overseas? Or recently, and this is just me, I've started hearing about homeschooling these kids. So that was very interesting. And it's like, I get to have 100% supervision on my kids throughout the day. So I wanted to learn more about that. And to do that, I had to talk to someone who was well vetted in the homeschooling space. So that's what Summar is here to teach us about. She's here to tell us all the details about homeschooling, the pros, the cons, how she does it, why she feels like it's important. We also talk about gender roles and how our culture kind of got it wrong and how you should be the change that you want to see in the generations to come. This is the longest podcast I ever recorded, and if I'm being honest, this could have gone for another 2 hours. So I would stay tuned until the end because there's a lot of hidden gems in there that you can relate to. And for me personally, now homeschooling is something that I'm starting to think of. If you're new here, if you haven't subscribed yet, welcome to Not From Here. This is going to be the biggest podcast for Western immigrants, and I would love for you to be a part of it. And now with that being said, let's get the show started.
Welcome aboard Middle East Airlines.
والمتوجهة إلى
طيران الشرق الأوسط يرحب
مدينة القدس العربية.
Summar, how are you? Alhamdulillah. I'm good. Welcome to Not From Here. Summar, we start this off always with a self-introduction on your part. And it's when you look in the mirror, who is Summar to Summar?
Who's Summar to Summar? That's a interesting question. I guess I see myself as somebody who is like striving always, somebody who is like a student, like I'm a lifelong learner, I love learning, somebody who is always striving to do better, learn and from their mistakes and make the world a better place, like, and while I'm bettering myself. I do like see, I have like a very critical inner voice. So I see a lot of flaws, like things that I would love to fix about myself. When I look in the mirror, like, I mean, not like physically, but I see things that I would like to fix about myself. And I think that's like what drives me, is just like always trying to improve and change. And yeah.
Do you ever do it physically though, like where you stand in front of the mirror and like you straight up talk to yourself?
I do talk to myself.
Okay.
Even not just in the mirror. Like I have a very like rich inner dialogue with myself. I'm a very reflective person.
Okay. So you do criticize yourself a lot?
I do criticize myself a lot, yeah.
You do it prior to anyone mentioning it? For example, let's say you do something specific and your spouse would bring it up. Like, do you criticize yourself prior to like anyone else noticing it?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
I'm aware of those things.
How are you aware like of something wrong that you did if no one mentions it to you?
I don't know if it's like the way that we were raised, but I'm like very intuitive about the way that my actions or things are perceived by other people. And I know it can be like it can be an extreme where like it's almost like suffocating that you're worried about how other people are going to perceive you. But I feel like I have a really good like handle of like, oh, I messed up in this situation, or that's like not a nice character trait to have. Even if maybe I won't like, especially if it's something like, that's brought up. You said like, oh, if my husband brings up something,
Yeah.
like you don't want to admit it. Your ego doesn't want to admit it, but like I already know, that's something that I want to work on.
I think a lot of people reflect on like their days towards the end of the day, like, okay, what happened today? Especially like what I'm understanding is like when people go to bed, if they want to reflect in that silence, they reflect. And other people reflect, like, let's say after this conversation we have, like after I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have said this here. Like, which type are you of? Like after you do your interactions, do you kind of like, how did that go? Was that like, did I do well here, or is it kind of after?
Like, as in how far? Like how far?
Like
after?
yeah, like how frequently during the day do you reflect?
I'm. It's like a constant.
Okay, so
it
is.
doesn't stop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like that too, and I would have thought if someone told me like someone's reflecting like all the time, that would be annoying, but I think it kind of puts you in check.
Oh, for sure. And sometimes like your frustration is that other people aren't like this because you hold yourself to that standard, and and I feel like it would make things a lot easier if other people did too.
Like some people might realize maybe weeks after, let's say there's a small conflict between us, and we had this conversation, and I emotional intelligence 0. I couldn't pick up on the cues. We left, and then I realized, oh, someone's not talking to me. I wonder why, and I wronged you.
Yeah.
And then it would take me a couple weeks to understand, like, maybe I did something wrong there. But other people would be right after that conversation. I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that to someone.
Yeah. No, I have lots of experiences with that where it's unfortunate. You wish that some, like, especially, like now I know that we have like this cancel culture, where you just want to like cut out people. But I feel like it's important to like offer like that invitation to bring somebody in and kind of see like where something went wrong. Like if you care about, relationships, especially like I know we're going to talk about later in like the homeschool community. But sometimes no matter what you say and how you do it, unfortunately that other person, if they're not like self-reflecting, they're not going to perceive it well. And it's just you just have to, I don't know.
Yeah. Move on.
Yeah.
You talked about like how it was during like your growing up. How was your household while you were growing up?
I feel like my household was kind of it was like a cultural battlefield. That's how I would describe it.
A cultural battlefield.
Yeah.
In what way?
Okay, so my dad is Lebanese.
Okay.
Muslim, and my mom is white American.
Okay.
And I mean, she's like her mother is Polish, her father's Albanian.
Okay.
But here, like the Europeans that assimilate over time, like their culture is American, they're white American. And so there was these forces that kind of, I think, challenged like how my dad wanted to raise us, and so there was this clash. And it wasn't like I mean, I want to be respectful to, the privacy of my parents and stuff, but like it wasn't the most like stable kind of. I grew up very fast, like because I was aware of these conflicts, what you sense when your parents are not on the same page.
How fast do you start realizing like, hey, there's two very different sides to my parents? Like my father is Middle Eastern one way, and then my mother is American another way.
Probably as early as like 4 years old.
Really, that young?
Yeah. And because I think my dad had to have these conversations with us early, like my grandparents like didn't. It's not like they wanted that, like my parents to be together.
Of course.
My grandparents are like evangelical Christian, and
then the grandparents on the other side are Muslim.
Yeah, they're Muslim. Yeah. I mean, they lived in Lebanon, so they weren't really here around. But I think my dad felt like that there was like a threat, and he raised us to be aware of that threat always. I mean, I don't know if I should tell this story. But my dad tells me that he knew very early on that my mom's parents were trying to teach me who Jesus was. That he came home from work and I don't know, he was like moving some books on the bookshelf and like a picture of Jesus fell out, and that I was maybe a toddler, but I said in whatever my toddler voice, Jesus, and my dad was. I think that's when he like there was no trust, and then it was like, okay, you're gonna be aware of like the people are gonna try to tell you this and people are gonna try to teach you this, and then like subtle things of like he wanted us to have that strong Islamic identity.
Did you feel more connected to your dad's,
Yes,
call it
we
conservative?
felt more Lebanese.
Okay.
Even though, but in school though, to be honest, like I felt like I never quite fit in. Like, and this is something like I've had conversations with my sister and my siblings about. But we were like too white for the Arab kids and too Arab for the white kids.
Okay.
Yeah, there were some things that we did that were just like culturally didn't happen. Like we played sports, we wore shorts. I didn't wear hijab till I was 17.
Okay.
And then, but like then other things we were like, we don't have friends outside the house. There's no sleepovers. We don't visit, like, we don't have friends. Your siblings are your friends, and that's basically it. And then like even like certain functions at school, like things that, you know, there would be like movie days. Like we would be the kids that sat out. We didn't watch, I don't know, I remember like Pocahontas and George of the Jungle and stuff. Like other Arab Muslim kids were like in this classrooms doing that. Like we didn't. So it was I don't know, different.
Did you feel resentment in a way to like, especially those teenage years where like all we want to do is fit in, and then you can't find a friend in a way? Like do you feel resentment to the household that you were raised in?
Not really.
Okay, good.
And I never felt resentment. I don't know if I had time to feel resentment. Like we had a lot going on growing up.
How does your mom's side of the family feel when you tell them, I want to put on hijab, or when they see you with it for the first time?
Oh, that was an adjustment. I mean, they're like we still visit them. They're sweet. We visit them on their holidays, and we just don't have like that close. Sadly, like I mean, I wish it would have been different, but we just don't have that close of a connection with them.
Do you think what about your mom?
I do. No, we see my mom.
I mean, like, how was her reaction to it?
I mean, at the time, my parents were like splitting up. So I remember like, she wasn't part of that decision. It was just like one day she came to pick us up for school, and my sister and we both decided to wear it at the same time. And we came out in hijab, and I think, I mean, she was surprised. I mean, for her, like, you know, I mean, my mom is a Christian, so for her, you know, Jesus is the way, and like, she hopes that maybe one day we'll accept that, but like, she still loves us, and the one thing that I'll give my mom credit for is she did, when she was married to my dad, like, she did respect our culture and religion, and she was the one who took us to the mosque and to, you know, Arabic school, and she, you know, tried to learn Arabic, like and she still has a good relationship with like my dad's sisters and my teta and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah.
Do you think that these this mix of cultures will ever work? Like, do you think your dad or your mom could have done anything differently and it would have worked and it would have been a regular household?
I used to think that when I was younger, that maybe that there could have been something. But as I get older, and maybe it's just a little bit cynical, I know people that make it work. But I feel like you do have to give up a lot to make it work, especially if you want to hold to your like Islamic, like Arab roots.
Yeah.
I mean, and growing up, like we knew other hybrids. I mean, I would just call myself like most of the other hybrids, they didn't turn out like we did. They were more heavily toward the mother side, which is the Americanized.
I feel like that side's more fun as a child. It's more appealing.
It is.
There's less like restrictions. Maybe it's less conservative in a way.
That's true.
Where you have more freedom.
But this is why I think this is maybe where my idea about gender roles comes in place, is because the reason why I think we are very strongly attached to our like Islam and our culture is because my dad was the most involved in our upbringing. Like he was the major kind of nurturer and kind of voice and like presence and guide growing up. And I think for the ones that didn't turn out that way, the dad was working, and the mom was the one who, like
Spent all the time with the
spent
kids.
all the time, and they grow up with that culture. Like, it's not like a sinister thing. It's just like that's what they grew up with. That's what they know. Like, there's no harm in this kind of way of life, and it's fun, like you said. So, that's what the kids end up kind of leaning toward because it's easy.
Did your mom and dad both work?
So my mom worked when we were a little older.
Okay.
I think my dad wanted her to stay home.
Okay.
And then, she worked and she worked in our school when I was in middle school. So she was like a parapro.
Mm.
So that was like good because she kind of, she was also present in that way. Kind of kept us out of trouble.
Yeah. What makes the Islamic side attractive to a young kid, do you think? Because I think a lot of parents struggle with that nowadays. They want their kids to be like close to the Islamic side, and both parents, like in most households, are Arab, they're Muslim, but for some reason they can't get their kids to like the religion or be attached to the religion. And then in your case, you had a mixed household and you were still kind of leaning more towards the Islam. What do you think your dad did, or what was so appealing to you guys?
So I think like we were kind of raised with like maybe like a stoic philosophy, like like ration and reason like above all. And like my dad kind of made Islam relatable in that it made sense. Like it was that balance that we all like needed as humans, that like it filled that like spiritual, physical void in ways that like no other like kind of ideology or way of life could fulfill. And I really felt that growing up. Like there was, I think, that balance, and to me that was appealing. And we were also raised with this mindset of that like challenges are like important, like they're part of who makes you you. And like you can take the easy way in life, but it's not the worthwhile route. And that's like something that's part of me. And like I don't know, I enjoy the challenge. I go for the challenging things, and I want my kids to feel that way too.
How do you challenge your kids at a young age?
How do I challenge them? I mean, they have their challenges. Like kids, they face challenges and things that they don't know how to do, in the way that they don't know how to express their emotions, in the way that they, deal with peers, like conflicts, and you kind of like push them to like feel that discomfort. Like it's important for them. Like you don't step in and try to save them from it.
You don't be the fixer.
You can't be the fixer. No. I mean, there's sometimes you want to, like, you have to be a guide. You can't just like let them, if you want to teach somebody to swim, you can't just throw them in the water and expect them to whatever. But you have to like let them struggle a little bit.
Do you feel like a lot of parents do that? They just fix it to get it over with?
Yeah, I do. I think, especially like thinking back about like our parents' kind of generation and the way that they were raised, there was a lot of like suppression of emotions. And I think like emotions make them uncomfortable, like made them uncomfortable. And you want it to stop, and the easiest way, like there's easy ways to stop the experiencing of like strong emotions. You can give a kid an iPad, you can give them something sweet, you can, just like distract them, but you're not teaching them the skill that they need to actually like learn how to deal with their emotion and move on from that challenge and like grow from it. So I think like we have that, it's our generation, like as parents, we struggle with that emotion because we had to suppress it. And so we don't know what to do like when our kids like express strong emotions, because they do. And it is a trigger, and it was something that I really struggled with as a parent at first.
Do you become defensive?
Defensive? No, you feel like anxious. Like as if like you're doing something wrong.
Like make it stop.
Yeah. Like there's like these voices, that, okay, well, the one voice is like you hear, especially from our parents' generation, is you would never dare act like this. So you think, oh my God, what's wrong with my kid? Like, why is he or she doing this? And so it's a trigger for you and you want it to stop. And you're going to use either the method that you learned, which is like just suck it up, you know,
Yeah.
or you can, stop and kind of teach them the skill that will build that resilience over time.
You kind of have to teach them how to express their emotions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like by acknowledging, okay, I see you're having a hard time. Like this is, you're sad or you're angry. You feel frustrated. I could feel that. I feel it too. Okay, let's figure out how to solve this problem together.
Are these the words that you use with your kids?
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. So, do you talk to your kids like you would talk to, like having a conversation like me and you, like as grown-ups? Or do you kind of baby them? Or is there a mix of both? Because there's two camps on this. Is like, don't talk to them like they're grown-ups before they're grown-ups. But the other camp is like, no, they'll understand. If that's the language that you want them, if that's the language you choose to speak with them with, then they'll understand and they'll be mature.
Yeah. I use both, but I think I use far more the like talking like as adults, like look habibi, like that's how I talk to my son, like this is how it is, this is, we can do this, we can do that. I mean there are moments when I, especially when they're younger, you try to meet them where they're at. But I do feel like you said, there's these two, and I see them as like extremes, I think that like in the history of human thought, we swing like a pendulum from one side to the other. We're trying to find that balance, but sometimes we just miss the mark. And I feel like, in our parents' generation, it was very like kind of like a martyr complex. Just you endure, and like even the worst things, which shouldn't be endured, like, abusive relationships, just parents or in-laws overstepping boundaries. And then like the opposite, which is like everything's a trigger, everything's trauma, and
Yeah.
and there has to be like, there's somewhere in the middle, and you have to find that balance. I mean, I think like we're trying to solve the problem that this extreme created. So this extreme kind of created this whole, like, now we're having these discussions about mental health and the importance of emotions, and now we have like the opposite, where every feeling is validated, which there's some like, there should be some truth to that.
There should be truth to
it. But it's almost to a point where it's like even the smallest like whiff of challenge or struggle is like abandon ship immediately. On one side, it's like, no, endure. Like you break yourself enduring.
Right.
And this is like, no, khalas.
Every single thing has to be addressed.
Yeah. And I see this with like, parents these days, and it's not like, this is not an indictment or to say like these parents are bad. I just think they don't have the right like language and the support to like be okay with the challenge. But like, okay, kids, I don't know what to do with them. Like, here, iPad, or here's screen time. It's just too overwhelming for me to think. I talk to these kinds of parents, it's the overwhelm is real. The anxiety they feel is real, but like they don't have the support or like almost like resilience to just accept that that's part of like doing something that is worthwhile. Like breastfeeding is one thing, that it's very painful and uncomfortable like the first couple weeks, but like as soon as like there's some parent that they feel that, and then it's like, okay, you know what, I'm switching to formula.
You're usually gonna abandon it.
I'm gonna abandon it. And I wish they had the support and the kind of like, I don't know,
guidance,
the like the language, the cognitive like structure, the mental model to be able to navigate that, that struggle and come out doing like, okay, if they want to do formula or if they want screen time, like my kids have screen time, but like in an empowered way, not just as a like, I don't know what to do here, solve this problem.
Do you think that they know that they're doing something wrong, or do you think that's part of the problem is they think abandonment is the right way to go because I can't deal with this feeling right now?
I think they think abandonment is the right way to go because it's comfortable. Like this is too much. I hear this all the time. It's too much for my mental health. My mental health can't handle this. My anxiety is too high. Like I can't. So this is the quick fix. And there's nothing wrong with having like those like in a balance. But if it's like always your go-to.
Not for that to be the way of life.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, we just got off Ashura, and one of the days we was during a majlis, and at one of the programs we do the photography and the video. So I'm walking like during the majlis, and I just see this kid sitting on a, like his dad sitting here crying, right? And then his son has an iPad and he's watching something or playing a game, and I'm like, yo, I don't think this is how I want my kid to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be in like, and I know the kid was probably like nagging or yelling, and the dad didn't want like the discomfort, and it's majlis and everyone wants the quiet and they want to listen, and it's hard, I feel, to navigate that, to find a way where you can address the situation when like you're limited, like right before the lecture starts, or like, what am I supposed to do? Khalas, here,
Yeah.
just to get it over with.
No, I know that's hard. I know, because as parents, like, we all need that time to recharge, like, for ourselves, you know? And so like, I can't, what's the word? Like, you know, say that this is wrong, you know, or like criticize this parent, because maybe they really needed maybe this, you know, this Ashura for them. But I think more, like, for me, it's more an indictment on, and I'm a little critical about this. I feel like our spaces are not family friendly.
I agree with you.
And
There's too much judgment, you feel.
there's too much judgment. Even like just the design of the spaces, you know, like they're made like, especially like the big centers, you know, they have the space for the katbiktabs and they have the space for the janaza. And it's like life, you know, the beginning of, you know, relationship and beginning of life for some people and the end of life. And that critical period in between where the people that are getting married and then they're going to come in as family, you know, with children, they don't have a space for them.
Right.
You know, and especially like you hear our centers like lament all the time about where are our youth, and they mean like teenage adults. Well, if those teenagers and now adults, you know, young adults, never came when they were kids, like never felt welcomed in these spaces as kids, how would they have an attachment?
Absolutely.
Why would they come? And coffee shops and whatever is not going to bring them.
Right.
You know, like if they don't really like, I want my kids to have that, like, really feeling that attachment to these centers, the space, like the house of God, you know, not just like as in a specific center, but like feel that they can go to the house of God whenever they want and they feel welcomed in these spaces. The times that I've gone, honestly, it's sad. Like I've limited, when they were younger, I had gotten some reactions that made me not want to bring them. And as I got older, I was like, you know what, khalas, I'm going to. You know, they're starting to get older. I don't want to miss that critical period of time.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point, like, in the last couple of years when I would take them to Ashura, I would go sit with them in their kids' programs, you know, and I would help the teacher that was there because I felt like they're just like an afterthought, the kids. Even though they're the most, to me, they're the most, this age is the most important age.
That's what everyone says, that those ages are the most critical for, especially those kinds of programs, like for the kids. What I liked about like the program that like we were volunteering at was during the majlis, there were like, if you wanted really a space to put your kids, there was a whole like youth program in the back where you can just drop them off as little as 4 years old and you pick them up right after the majlis ends. And there's kid-friendly Islamic oriented activities where they would teach through play or like an actual play in front of them, or like puppet shows and stuff like that, depending on the age group. So I feel like we need more of that. Yes.
And no, and I want to give credit. I feel like in the last couple of years, there have been a lot more institutions addressing this.
Because we have more people like you that will speak up, and then there's probably a mom like you that said to her husband, who might be one of the organizers, like, hey, we need this. Like this is a need. And now I feel like this new generation is really starting to take this more seriously. Like,
For
no,
sure.
we have to do this.
Yeah.
Now, I want to kind of like go into like in your household, and I knew like you're very, very big on homeschooling, and it's very interesting because I feel like nowadays that's all the conversations that we're having, and I'll tell you them. And this is me. I'm almost like I'm almost getting married. My friends are all like around the same age. We're all going into it, and this is the conversation. Public school, a huge no. Private Islam school, maybe, like that's an option. Hopefully we can afford that for all our kids. We moved back to Lebanon, and now recently I started hearing about homeschooling like more frequently, and the idea sounds fantastic, but I still kind of wanted to have some more information about
Sure.
it.
Like what part of the idea sounds fantastic? I'm gonna ask you the question.
Because I feel like I'm going to be like, I want to be very protective of my kids, especially in like the society that we have today. Like literally every shape, size, color possible are in, like, I don't know what they're being exposed to exactly. I feel like just instinctively, if they're under my supervision, it's going to be a better idea.
Okay.
From that, like from that perspective, I'm thinking about it. Like
Yeah.
at least me and my wife are gonna take care of these kids.
Yeah.
We're going to be supervising them. But before we get into that, I wanted to know how you got into it in the first place.
My kids were in a early learning program through like U of M Dearborn. I was in the middle of grad school at the time, so I had them a couple of days, and I wasn't sure. It was, and then COVID hit. I wasn't sure what I was going to do, and honestly, I never, like, it's not like I grew up knowing like homeschoolers. I knew of two, and they both played instruments. I used to play violin growing up, and it's always like the artsy, whatever.
Yeah.
That there's that stereotype. They were like, there was two homeschoolers. They would do orchestra with us. They were homeschooled during the day, and they would come. So that was like my exposure to homeschooling. And then I met, like, there was a group of moms. We would go for these nature walks, and one of the moms was a homeschooler. I mean, she wasn't a Muslim. She was like American, and she was a homeschooler. Her kids were really sweet.
So homeschooler means,
Somebody who home educates.
okay. So this is the first thing. So when people say homeschool, they're not referring to someone coming and teaching their kids at home.
No.
You're a homeschooler.
Yeah,
You're the one that
I'm the
teaches your
educator.
kid. Okay.
Yeah. So then COVID hit, and the schools shut down. Their program shut down, and I was like, since they weren't going every day, I was still doing things with my kids. Like I had a schedule and like kind of routine of things that, like, we would do puzzles together and art, and then I was like, you know what, I'm doing these things with them already. Like this is learning, for them, because they were like 3 and 4 years old at the time. Like this is what they're supposed to be doing. Kids learn through play, and we have that Islamic model too. From 0 to 7, it's children are the masters. So I was like, I could do this, and my son was gonna start like in the trajectory of things. He was supposed to start kindergarten in the fall. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna send him to kindergarten. Like I don't want to. There's just too many good reasons.
When
why I
did you
should
realize
homeschool.
this? So he's starting kindergarten in the fall. When do you kind of get this realization? Summer?
Like
time?
May, June.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
There was like an option to like start the registration for kindergarten, and I was like, I'm not gonna. send
okay.
him.
So you ditched that.
Yeah. And honestly, it has been a learning process for me, and I've evolved so much through this homeschooling. Like how I imagine homeschooling has changed, and how I do homeschooling has changed since that time. It's been 4 years. Yeah, my son just turned 9.
What's interesting is that you did that switch right away. Like there wasn't like a preparation phase. It was right before the semester started in a way.
Yeah, it was. And I had and then I had this conversation and I had it on my blog at the time, on Instagram, with the mother that I had met that was a homeschooler, and she was like a very like supportive advocate for homeschooling, and I just feel like it takes that one person that makes it kind of, that like knows what to say and is encouraging and makes you feel like you're doing the right thing, and so when I felt like, okay, this is where my heart is leading me, I want to homeschool my kids, when I interviewed her and asked her all these questions, I felt like, okay, this is something that I could do.
What's that one thing that you heard from her that you were like, oh, 100% I'm doing this?
That that learning is not how we imagine it. Like, even though I knew it deep inside that, kids are learning, they're sponges from the time they're born. You know, they're always picking up. And it's not through formal instruction. When we hear learning now, because we've kind of gone through the systems, we imagine learning as a teacher basically spitting out facts at students and students just repeating them or taking notes and taking tests. Like, that's not learning. You know, that's a very specific form of learning.
Right.
But learning is already happening. And once I kind of opened my eyes to that process, then it was like I couldn't unsee it. And it was something that I was like, okay, how do I nurture that even more? And, you know.
The thing is, you didn't really know about it. Like, you weren't planning on it before. Like, now I feel like see how I'm telling you, maybe I'm like 4 or 5 years removed from that conversation in my household as well, but it's something that I'm kind of prepping for 5 years in advance. You did not have that prep.
No.
So you wanted them just to go like the regular route in a way.
At first, like, I had never thought about it, I guess. But it's funny that you say that, because I think it's nice to have, like, I don't have regrets in life. No, I don't have regrets. I'm pretty content with the way things are.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, like, there are some things, okay, you wish you could be a little more prepared for. This is one of those things. Like, for those people who are, because I have a lot of moms, we you know, we have like a homeschool like community, like a WhatsApp group, and there are a lot of moms in there that have like toddlers or even like babies, and it's something that's in their mind that they're thinking about, and I think it's nice to be in that position where you have all this time to prepare. And it's funny because, like, you know, in every other part of our life, especially like in the business world, like when we take on a job, or when we go through education, like, there is like a process to get there, you know. You don't just jump into a job without having like the necessary training and, you know, even having that like that time period of like where you kind of immerse yourself. But with parenting, you are literally you are thrown into it.
Learn
Like,
as
there's
you go.
it's the most important job in the world, I think.
Yeah.
To me, it's the most
I
important
agree.
job. And there's like zero training, zero reading, zero, you know. It's so interesting, but you have that opportunity, and for parents that are, you know, considering homeschooling or even have that thought, I like encourage them. They have the opportunity to do the research, do the reading. There's tons of books that I would recommend, like, not just as a homeschooler, as a parent, like, to prepare yourself for that, because even if your kids go to public school or private school, you still have to, especially in this day and age, be involved in their upbringing. And I think, like, I'm a product of public school. Like, I turn out the way I am because my dad was really involved in our, you know, our education, our, like, now looking back, there's things they wouldn't have been allowed to happen. My dad used to come, like, drop by at school. He would walk through the hallways. We would see him, like, you know, in our classroom, like, from outside the classroom. Like, we knew he was there. Like, other kids knew you can't mess with these kids. You know, their dad is involved. Like, teachers, like, talk to my dad on, like, a, you know, like, on a name to, you know, basis. Like, so there was that feeling, like
he's there.
He's there. And in schools, the way they are, one of the reasons why I kind of homeschool, or I feel strongly about homeschooling, is schools, the structure of schooling, like, severs that relationship.
Right.
You know?
It kind of detaches the parent from being involved.
For sure. And to go back, like, there are ways that parents, because I'm not like public school is not like the enemy, or, you know, private school is not the enemy. I think it's like the system is the enemy, the capitalist system that we live in.
Yeah.
And it's like pursuit of profit and wealth accumulation, and like creating this like maximizing productivity. Like, we've just like detached from nature, from parent, from faith, from so many things. And so, like, schools, you sit in a classroom from 8 to 4, you come home, you barely scarf down food, you have extracurriculars, you have homework to do. Like, the quality time that you have with your parents is so minimal. But parents can mitigate some of those things by being, like, intentional, by, you know, really, like, especially on the weekends, like, carving out that quality time. So I don't feel that, you know, if you put your kid in public school, you're bad and they're going to be ruined for life. Like, there are ways parents can, you know, really kind of show up for their kids.
But you have to be intentional about it.
But you have to be intentional.
Walk me through a day of like homeschool. Like, okay, let's compare them. You just did, by the way, perfectly. You go to public school at 8, you come back at 4, you come home, you eat you have a bite. If you have extracurriculars, extra activities after you do them, then homework, then you go to bed. What's that day in the homeschool world?
In a homeschool world. So now it's a little different because I just had a baby.
Okay.
And that's what I like about homeschooling is that we shift based on our needs. Like we can be flexible because we have that like luxury of being more efficient with our time. In public school, you're in a classroom with one adult and a bunch of kids. Okay, a lot of time is spent like literally kind of getting the class to be quiet so you can do the instruction. And then lining up, so go to lunch, and so we kind of skip all that like frivolous stuff. We don't really have to deal with it. In the morning, ideally, was before I gave birth.
Yes, I want before and after, like how
Okay.
things change.
Okay, before I gave birth, my kids wake up around 7:30, 8. They eat breakfast. Okay. They have an hour of free play. Okay, so there's like Lego. We have like a shelving system downstairs. There's Legos, there's puzzles, there's art, whatever they want. They usually go for the Legos. My son loves to build, Star Wars things. And then around 9 o'clock, they come up. We kind of sit in the living room. I have, it's not like a PowerPoint, but I have like screen mirroring AirPlay to the TV in the living room. I have like this kind of PowerPoint that has like, welcome. We do like a kind of check-in, what's our day going to look like, how are you guys feeling, that kind of thing. And then we kind of start with our lesson. We do our language arts. We do our math. We do writing. And then we finish around noon. Like ideally, we would try to finish around noon. We have lunch. We make lunch together. We go out, get some outside time. Then we do salah together, which that's a nice thing that I really like about our day because it's built around that. And we have that balance. And then we will do some kind of like supplemental, like science or social studies. And then like an activity that they have chosen, like we alternate. So like Mondays is like baking day, Tuesdays is art, Wednesday is like poetry tea time. So we have like each day has its own thing. We kind of have gotten into this like rhythm, and they know, and like they look forward to whatever it is for that day. And then we're like, by the time kids are walking home from school, because we have, kids in our neighborhood that go to public school, like they're enjoying, something, outside time, some free play or art or whatever it is that we're doing. So most of the kind of the academic subjects we've finished by noon.
Is it hard to like the academic subjects as the same as they would have in like school?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Curriculum wise.
Yeah. So in the state of Michigan, like, and I know I'm sure all the states have their standards like listed. You can go easily find them for each age group, K through 12. These are the standards for science. These are the standards for math for this, grade level. So I always do that before the beginning of the year. My son's going to start 4th grade, so I'll print all the fourth grade standards, and I'll pick curriculums that make sure that they hit these standards.
Okay. And that's 5 days a week?
No, so I do 4 days a week. I do a 4-day schedule. Friday is like, we have something called Nature Club.
Okay.
So we meet with a bunch of homeschool moms. We go for a hike in the Henry Ford Estate area, the Environmental Interpretive Center area. They have a nature journal. They have to write their observations in that. We do Arabic, and then we have Salatul Jum'ah and the cleaning. And then Friday night is movie night. So it's like it's kind of like a chiller day.
Yeah.
But like that's what they expect. They know it's Arabic. They know that it's Jum'ah, and they look forward to having movie night with their cousins.
Your kids though are different ages, so how do you kind of curate the curriculum for both? They're in different grades.
So my kids are kind of close in age.
Okay.
So my son is 9. My daughter, like my second born, is 7.5.
Okay.
and girls are a little kind of more advanced. So with our language arts, it's something that we do together. I found a curriculum that fits, like there's different, philosophies, like teaching philosophies for like reading and writing. Our emphasis is like on reading aloud together.
Yeah.
Like they learn that vocabulary and through like, it's like a family, event.
Communication
Yeah.
through with you guys.
Yeah. So we read aloud together, and then they do their, they do their workbook activity together. Math, I do one-on-one.
Okay.
So with my son, I'll sit while, my other one is finishing something else. And we have like 20 minutes of reading as part of their day. So they have like a timer.
Okay.
So one can go sit down and do the 20 minutes of reading while I kind of do like one-on-one math. And then vice versa. When he's doing his 20 minutes of reading, I'm doing the math.
Yeah. You asked me when I told you like homeschooling felt very appealing, you asked me why. Like, did you ask me that because it's not as appealing as it sounds, or because I want to know like how hard it is on you to do all that? Because you're technically working.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
No, I asked if it was appealing to you because I think there are different reasons why people find homeschooling appealing.
Okay.
One of them is that, you're able to have that necessary, I think, guidance and role in your child's life that they should have. That's one of the reasons why I homeschool. But I feel like the other reason I asked is because when you do something out of fear, it might be easy to abandon it if it gets hard. Like, oh, I fear that my kids are going to turn out a certain way if I don't do this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, my kids really need me in their life, and I want to give them this special, unique educational experience. And that I feel like that's more empowering.
Right.
And like that, to me, that's what drives me.
Okay.
More than, yes, that's part of it. I do, people say, oh, what about the socialization? That's like the biggest, I don't know if
was
you've
literally
heard.
just about to ask that.
What about the socialization, And like, it's kind of the point is I don't want my kids socializing with all the different kids. I mean, not in like an arrogant or conceited way.
No, in a protective way.
Yeah, in a way that recognizes their like what's developmentally appropriate for them. There's a book called Hold On to Your Kids by Dr. Gabor Mate and Gordon Neufeld, I think.
Gabor Mate is a genius.
Yeah. And they talk about this, like the way the structures of schools are, that they have kind of exacerbated this problem of what they call like peer orientation.
Okay. What does that mean?
Where kids, the bulk of the time that they spend in their day is with other children.
Correct.
Who are, emotionally, like cognitively immature. Our like brains are still developing. They don't have that like ability to give the proper guidance and support, and children are like looking to their peers for values,
Validation.
for validation, for all the things that they should not be getting from their peers. Like,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah. So that's what I mean when I say I don't want my kids socializing. I don't want them to have that strong peer influence because it's not healthy for them to have it.
That's so interesting. You know how I thought about it? I'm like, they are going to be exposed to multiple different personalities, and that would let your kid kind of know how to deal with different personalities, like kind of build their emotional intelligence in a way. That's why that's how I thought about socialization is them not learning like mimicking other people's personalities, but more on how to deal with other people around them, because at one point they are going to grow up and maybe they go out into the outside world and they see this person's very loud, like that craves attention, and he's never seen that at home because we like at home we're trying to not let that like this like drooling over attention be a prominent thing.
Right.
So if my son sees a person like that, how is he going to deal with that? or if my daughter sees a girl that all she cares about is her looks and flirting and all these things, but at home her and her mother, this was not what she's used to from her mother.
Right.
Yeah. So how what do you kind of think about that?
So there's two things. I think, well, one, if they've never experienced that, I mean, it might be a good thing, right? I guess they won't feel like I don't know, what's the word? Like, especially with the flirting, they won't relate to it. Like, it won't be something that they will be in their realm of experience, and it's not something that they would be, like, they won't behave in that way. Like, that's a positive thing from that.
Correct.
But the other thing is, I think in that there is a misconceptualization of what homeschooling is. That also leads people to this like assumption that they won't experience these types of people. So homeschooling is not just sitting in the house, and only, seeing your siblings and your parent. Like, we homeschool, and this is something that I'm trying to like build with a few like homeschooling moms, is a community for other homeschoolers to be able to meet and play and learn in. And we have that like somewhat. We meet, like, we do monthly field trips. We, have these casual, like, we'll meet at the library, go get some books, go to the park, whatever, take our learning there and, do our homeschool in the park kind of days. And just like the kids should see other kids.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm not an advocate of like homeschooling in isolation. That's definitely not. But even then, like, kids are part of your day. Like, so, you asked me to describe our day. Like, there are times when, okay, well, we have to go grocery shopping. So I'll have the kids like, here, write a list, and then we'll go in the middle of the day. We get comments like, shouldn't you kids be in school? But they'll see other people. Like, it's not,
I see what
they'll
you're
see
saying.
the grocer and the people shopping, and they'll, if anything, what school does is they kind of set them up in this artificial environment where they only see people of their age from K to 12 till the time they're 18.
Yeah.
When in the real life, in the real world, how many people work with only their, cohort of, or age group? You're dealing with older people, younger people. You're going to deal with like a spectrum of personalities.
That's a very good point.
But parents, I think homeschooling parents, and that is a flaw. Like, if parents are not intentional about it, that they should be intentional about making sure their kids do have socialization. Like, I don't believe in like homeschooling in isolation. And there is a stereotype. That is the stereotype of homeschoolers, and there is some truth to it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's something that I think it's not something that
It's
can't be
proper
overcome.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the
Okay.
main problem. It's something that homeschoolers can easily fix by finding like-minded people that share their values and make it happen.
The whole having like a WhatsApp group chat of all the homeschoolers around, or like some homeschoolers around, it makes total sense to have that. I just don't know why. Like, when you first mentioned it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like, that's such a cool idea. But when you say it like that, it makes more sense now in my head. Like, okay, like, yeah, if I can go out and exactly who are the people that are in this group chat, and the values, like you said, of these people now, and that like those parents that are homeschooling their kids are really putting in the effort, because what you described from 7:30 to 4 o'clock is a lot of effort. Like, I think the conversation is, can you handle that in the first place? Like, can a mother handle that?
So I just want, maybe I should clarify that this is my style. Like, there are so many different ways to homeschool. There's some people that they call themselves unschoolers. They don't have any structure at all.
Interesting.
Like the world is their, there's their classroom, and whatever they'll just like, they go on, there's a museum, and they'll go to the park, and whatever, like, learning happens like organically. I was maybe from 0 to 7, that was my philosophy, but I kind of have a more eclectic approach. I like pull from some of the other, I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Montessori, Waldorf. Okay, I believe in like preparing the environment. That's like a Montessori kind of value. So we have like resources, like materials the kids can use that are, you know, oriented towards learning certain things like math, reading, whatever. And I do believe in some structure. Like, I don't want them to, like, you know, graduate and completely, like, not be able to relate at all, you know? So I feel like there's that balance.
Let's take a little break from the conversation and let me tell you about this right here. This is Whoop. Whoop is a fitness wearable that is helping me go about my life. It shows me my strain, my recovery, and my sleep. Now, if you think about what are the most important parts of your physical health, sleep is one part of it where we really undermine and we don't take care of. Another is activity and how hard you're working out. And the third part is your recovery, how well you're rested each and every day. How well are you prepared to take on the following day? Whoop is built around these three metrics. It tells you what to do to get better sleep, what activities to do to wake up recovered the following day, and how much you should push your body every single day. This has been a life changer for me, and I think it will be the same for you too. Because you're a listener of the Not From Here podcast, Whoop has this offer to give you. Visit join.whoop.com/notfromhere and you can get the first 30 days for free. If you feel like it didn't change your life the way it did mine, it's as simple as just shipping it back to them. And now, back to the episode. Do you think at one point you will put them back in public school or private school?
No, I don't think so.
Even till 12th grade, all the way?
I don't think so. Like, the one thing I would maybe consider is virtual when they're older.
Okay.
Because I know Dearborn has, like, an option where you can do virtual schooling. But that's only if, like, my son, for example, the only reason I would consider is, like, some of the sports or extracurricular, like, you can't do it unless you're part of this public school system.
Exactly.
So maybe virtual. And I'm hoping, like, by then, you know, inshallah, like, he would maybe be taking, like, you know, like college credits, you know, like the dual enrolling. Like,
yes.
It wouldn't be, like, so, because I don't think kids at a young age should be on a screen, on, like, a computer screen for long periods of time. I don't think it's healthy.
So there's no screen time in your house until they finish. Like, you're not going to hand an iPad out during school hours, technically.
It depends.
Okay.
There are some, when it's a part of, like, but it's planned. Like, I have some math games that are, like, on the iPad. And, like, there's
like,
Khan Academy. Like, sometimes, like, it'll be, like, a supplemental thing. No, it's not, like, as a distraction.
like,
It will be, like, an intentional, like, okay, we're learning this concept. I just want to, like, see what, like, how, you know, what it's like. Because I don't do tests. But, like, sometimes I will, like, open Khan Academy and just see, like, how my son or daughter would fare if they were answering these kinds of questions. And for them, they think it's a game.
yeah.
You know? So.
But, like, the free play time.
Oh, there's no screen. No,
Okay, that's what I
screens
meant.
are not part of free play. No.
Okay. What's your background? Like, school-wise?
Oh, like education?
Yeah.
Okay, so my undergrad degree is in microbiology.
Okay.
And then I did a master's and PhD in anthropology.
Okay. So it's nothing related to, like, psych or, like, social, like, learning and stuff like that?
Not directly, but I think, like, you know, as anthropologists, you're interested in, like, culture and, like, people's thinking and, you know, practices and stuff. So I think I'm, like, always analyzing these things. Like, I see, because people think of culture as just, like, you know, this is, like, this tribal culture or this Lebanese culture, and, like, these are, like, the rituals and things associated with it. Culture can be, like, a home culture. Culture can be in a business, like the way people talk, the way the structures in place for communicating, and, like, all sorts of expectations. Like, that's also culture. So, like, I mean, I use it in the sense that I'm trying to build a certain culture at home.
Okay.
And hopefully with this, like, I do want to, my dream would be, inshallah, to kind of create a school, like a hybrid model of schooling where parents can, because I do think it's beneficial to have a little bit of, like, formal instruction once they're, you know, past the age of 7. So kind of give, like, parents a little bit of a break to have that, you know, their kids have some formal instruction in a setting that they're comfortable with for a short period of time, where they're not, like, detached, you know, and where they're kind of, it's a cooperative model where they're part of the learning too. And they're, like, involved in their child's education. So we're starting that, inshallah.
Are you starting that?
Kind of, yeah.
Do you have a space and everything?
No, this is
how
the
I
hardest
feel,
part.
yeah.
But like we started this year in my garage
Okay.
and in my house. Like I've been teaching like nature classes with my co-founder, and then we kind of launched a few classes for the summer, just to kind of like I really am of the belief that you just have to dive in. You want to do something, you just start.
Absolutely.
You can't have it all figured out before you start it. You're
That's
gonna
so cool.
learn as you go.
What are the hardest parts of homeschooling? Like, what are like the cons, if you want to call them?
I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't call them cons.
Okay.
But there is something that is hard. But I think it's hard if you're a parent, just in general. But it's magnified times 10 because you don't get a break from your kids, and that is that if you have not worked on yourself, or like, there's no such thing as like arriving at a perfect like whatever. But if you're not willing to like acknowledge and come to terms with some things, then it's going to be very difficult for you to like manage the challenges of homeschooling because you're going to be triggered as a parent.
What do you mean by that?
Spending time with your kids, they're fighting, they're going to have conflicts, they're going to like have their challenges. Like if you're not like emotionally like if you don't know how to emotionally regulate and deal with those challenges, you're going to have a really hard time. So I really like recommend that parents, and that's what we talked about at the beginning, like really prepare yourself for parenthood and like acknowledge, and you're not going to know until you actually start parenting, but like children are a mirror, and you're going to start reacting to things because you're going to realize that you have like this expectation that you're going to come to realize if you reflect, maybe it's because I'm an anthropologist and that's like how this expectation comes from the culture and your upbringing, that this is how things should be, but then you realize that the way that your kids are does not match up to that reality.
Okay.
And you're going to have to come to terms with it. And you're going to have to like, a lot of parents think that they have to change something about their kids. Like there's something that parenting is something that you do so your kids are, become a certain way, but it's actually that you have to.
It's you that has to.
You have to
out.
do the changes. You have to make the changes.
Yeah.
Because that saying, like, some parents, like especially maybe the way that we grew up, like our parents' parenting style is like, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
It doesn't work that way.
Because they're going to look at you and they're going to do whatever you're doing.
You want your kids to do something, you better be doing it.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part, especially as a homeschooler, because your kids are going to see you 24/7. So if you want them to clean up after themselves, like you have to be doing that too.
Yeah.
You want them to like prioritize learning. They have to see you also doing that too. Like it's funny, yesterday there was like a webinar. It was like a homeschooling webinar, and there was like all these different talks, and I was tuning in, and my kids saw me and they were asking me what I was doing, and I told them, just like you learn, just like you have things that you have to do, like this is my learning, and so I can be a better parent, so I can be a better homeschooler. So they see me like doing those things. I want to model that for them. And if there's like challenges, which you're gonna have behavioral challenges, a lot of them will come from things that you need to change, not necessarily like there's no such thing as like kids are bad.
You don't think so? Like you don't think like this kid is born like very hyper?
Oh,
or,
I think
or like stuff like that.
No, I think there are.
Or like
kids.
with the bad temper.
Bad temper. I mean, there are cases, yeah, like clinically, but that's not like the majority.
Okay.
I think kids are like can be hyperactive. Like I know I don't want to give labels. That's the thing. But like, yeah, that's something that I noticed with my son, and I felt like I used to think that something was wrong with him,
Okay.
until I realized that and talked to other parents that they all the kids are kind of like that. And that growing up, that maybe we had to suppress that part. And that even in schools, which is not healthy, especially for boys, like you wonder where all these kind of issues are coming from. I mean, can it be that maybe, sitting in a classroom for 8 hours of the day, having to hold your, bodily urges, you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. You can't eat when you want to eat. You can't move when you want to move. Like I think it's like suffocating, especially for boys. I don't think.
In Lebanon, at one point,
They need to move.
we had to raise our hand if we want to drink water, too.
It's not. I don't think that's healthy or natural.
So, like, you don't feel like the difficulty with the actual activities that you guys are doing with your kids. Like, it's not hard from like a time management perspective. It's hard from Summar. You have to be like you have to be okay with like this lifestyle.
Yes.
In a way.
For sure.
Okay. And
I mean, I do hold myself to a high standard. I want, like, there are, and it mentioned in this webinar that I was listening to yesterday. She described it as like the ghost of public school past, where you have, like, there are insecurities and kind of intrusive thoughts about, like, am I doing the right thing?
Of course.
Are they going to be, like, able to graduate? Are they going to be able to, like, live a normal life? Like, those are things that are hard about homeschool, is that you have to, like, kind of drown out these, like, negative voices.
Are there examples like of people who made it through homeschool and now they're like excelling in college? Like, do we have those?
We have, I mean, and like we have these stories in our homeschool like group, but there was one homeschooling mom. Her daughter graduated, I want to say college at 16.
Okay.
And she was in the Henry Ford culinary program.
Okay, interesting.
So she finished high school, she graduated and was the youngest to graduate from that program.
Wow.
And that's the nice thing that I like about homeschooling, is that we kind of get our things done. Like, we have that time for the academic subjects, but then the kids have time to also explore their own interests, which I don't think that a lot of kids these days have the chance to do.
They don't at all.
Yeah, okay.
Zero. How much should the father be involved in the homeschooling process, not just the mother?
So obviously, like, like with the way that, like, our lives are, it's usually the dad that works, and it's usually the brunt of the homeschooling, at least like the formal instruction or whatever, the day is with the mom. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like the dad has to be in the know. And then because I think, like, learning doesn't only happen from 8 to 4. Like, there are things that the father should do when he comes home that also nurture that, like, love for learning, and that are like an extension of the homeschool day.
And relieve you in a way too.
Yeah.
Because if you're nonstop from 8 to 4.
Oh, for sure. And it doesn't have to just be like academic, like my husband, like, he does a lot of like housework stuff at home, like, so that it kind of sets me up for the next day. Like, if I had to homeschool and also clean up the kitchen after, and do all this stuff, like, it would be very hard for me.
Yeah. Like,
alhamdulillah, my husband, like, God bless him, he does. I know there's people sometimes they don't like hearing that my husband does these things, or they think it's like, oh, how could you let him do that? I don't know. We have this weird thing sometimes in our culture, but I do, like, the instruction through the day. Like, I spend my time with the kids. Like, that's a job,
Yeah, it's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job. I do the cooking, and then, we eat, and then my husband helps clean up so that we can have a fresh day the next day.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, it's like chaos the next day. And there have been days like that, especially after I gave birth, where it's just like, and then, like, after I gave birth, we all got I didn't, thankfully, but, like, my other kids got the flu. And I had to, like, quarantine with the baby, and it was like I would walk out from the room, and it was just like chaos. But that's the nice thing about homeschooling, is you have those days. Imagine you had to go to school and, like, keep yourself together. No, like, there's time for rest. Like, especially during Ramadan, it's nice. We can, like, take things slow. The kids stay up later. They're part of iftar, and they listen to the lectures with us. Like, we have that flexibility. It's really nice.
Yes,
like,
yes.
I know I don't want to, like, glorify so that, like, people don't really understand that there are challenges. It is, it is hard work, but there are the things that I like about it are so nice that, like, that's what keeps me doing it.
It sounds so appealing still.
Okay,
even
that's
after
good.
you.
That's good.
What are some things that, like, a parent should look at, like, the parents should look at, like, should they take into consideration, like, finances at all when they're doing this, or, like, for example, like, the size of their home? like you're saying you have this on you AirPlay off your phone, and then they have to do the work. Like, okay, then you need like this is how I'm translating. You need a room with 2 desks or no desks.
We're on the kitchen table.
Okay, you're on the kitchen table.
They're on the kitchen table.
So there's
And
no
it-
restrictions from that side, from like how, like the size of your house, like finances, like none of that stuff.
Not really. To be honest, if you
Okay.
want to homeschool, you'll find a way to homeschool. Like our house is 1,000 square feet, maybe
Okay.
like a little over. We live in a ranch. It's
Okay.
not like the biggest. We have a basement that's finished, and like we have space in the basement. It kind of looks like a little fun classroom. Like people love coming to our house because of it. But honestly, we do most of the instruction upstairs, and then like a lot of the play like stuff will happen downstairs.
Yes.
But it can be anywhere, and we have like, there's like the Montessori style. They have like these mats, like jute mats. So sometimes if the kids want to like lay on the floor and do it, they'll roll out a mat and they'll sit down and do it on the floor. But mostly it happens on the, like we'll read together around in the living room, and then like when they do their workbooks, it's on the kitchen table. We have a little cubby, like a little cart, and they put their books away when they're done.
So
But finances that you were talking about, there are a lot of, especially now because it's becoming more like mainstream, there are a lot of free resources for homeschooling. I mean, if you want to invest, there are like curriculums that you have to buy, and there is like that upfront kind of cost, but over time it's like not that much, especially if you have multiple kids and you're reusing things. So from like a cost standpoint, homeschooling, like aside from buying the workbooks and whatever curriculums you want, like there are so many free resources. Like even the library, like you come to realize like the library is such a gem. There's so many books. There's so many, like you can go on to the library during the day. There's always like activities set out for kids. Like there's a lot of things that we don't realize. Like, we feel like we have to buy, especially in this consumer kind of culture that we live in. But there is a way, and like sharing resources with families, borrowing. And even, with the library, there's like this kind of Michigan Pass where you get, and I just realized it as I started homeschooling, but there are like discounts to go to like museums and things like that. So there are like ways to, you don't have
can
to
always find a way.
splurge. You can always find a way.
Okay. I think right now there's a lot of parents that are on the fence. We're in July right now, almost like we're coming to close to the end of July. They might be thinking about like next school year. What kind of things can you say that would let them push for homeschooling if they're on the fence about it?
Like to encourage
Yes.
homeschooling for this fall semester. I would say that nobody knows your child better than you know them. And that if you are committed to learning, alongside your child, and, you kind of really see learning as like this like lifelong journey, that you really can do it. Like you like that's all the will, or like the kind of, I don't know how to explain it, the will, the drive to do it. If you have those two things, if you believe in those two things, you can do homeschooling. That you are your child's best teacher. You know them better than anybody else. You know what you can, offer them. You know how to like nurture them and also push them in ways that they need to be pushed. Like their quirks, like their hang-ups. You know how to like navigate those better than a teacher would be able to navigate them. And not to say they're wonderful teachers. It's just like the system is like you're one teacher and all these children, you're not going to be able to give them honestly that
Of course.
what they need.
And what Zainab Shami told me on the podcast is the system is designed to keep children ignorant and your kids ignorant. Like that's the design. And that made me think a lot about, do I want my kids in this system? Like, of course, we can do our part at home. We can try our best to be intentional about it. But do I want my kids going into a system where that's the mentality? Like, first of all, the values are not going to be at these public schools, that's for sure. At least the values that I want for my kids. And then the design to keep them ignorant is another thing. And I don't know, it's a very scary place.
Yeah. I know, I agreed with that sentiment I mean, I listened to her words. And I feel like, to me, like, because I see all these connections in my head, and maybe it's hard for me to articulate them, but I see the way that the school is designed is like, it's part of this capitalist system. It's designed to create this like obedient worker that's just gonna run on this capitalist hamster wheel and just like worry about just like these worldly things and, you know, just making ends meet and whatever. And there's like no connection to like to nature, no connection to like spirituality, nothing. And even the like what they learn, because you had mentioned like the like some of the values.
Yes, the
Okay.
value system.
The value system in this country, like a lot of what we learn is like this very like fairy tale like propaganda of US imperialism, you know? And you don't realize like how much it actually shapes your thinking until you've kind of like really, especially with what's been happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
And so homeschooling, this was the point that I wanted, is like to me as an act of resistance, because you are like opting out of this like ignorance, the system, and like what it eventually is going to feed, because schools are kind of like that pipeline to this, you know, this capitalist like hamster wheel and the expansionism and these like proxy, like to me they're all connected and they're all like built on this like destruction of this of community, destruction of nature, destruction
Of the household, the family.
Oh yeah, of the family, destruction of community. So homeschooling, like for me as an empowering thing, is like it's my act of resistance to this.
Yeah.
Because I want to raise like critical thinkers, people who are not, you know, children who hopefully grow up to be not ignorant adults.
Think outside the box too.
Who think outside the box, who care about justice, who will challenge these kinds of things that they see in the world.
I want to talk about something that you mentioned about our culture, and you mentioned it also at the beginning when you were talking about how much your dad was involved at home, gender roles and how we perceive them. Now, I think there's two conversations here. You have the man working, the woman working, which in a lot of households, that's the way it has to happen, unfortunately. Or not, unfortunately. It depends on like if the woman chooses to work or not. And then you have houses where the man works, the woman doesn't work. Where do you think we're getting it wrong?
I mean, I might be biased.
Okay.
In the way I see things.
That's okay.
Okay. And it might be more critical of men, is where I think that we get it wrong. And I'm not saying that they're like all women are perfect, and I don't think that. And maybe I'll clarify as it, but I'll just like start expressing where, and then maybe you can push back. Okay. I was recently listening to a lecture by Sayyid Mahdi Rastani, and he was talking about masculinity.
I listened to it
Okay.
today, I think, in the gym. Yeah.
Okay, at the beginning, he was talking about how we raise boys to have like a full green light. There's no standards or expectations. Like whatever they do, it's like they're like the greatest thing to have ever existed. And girls have all these standards, rules. Can't do this, can't do that. Like hype this, and like we have a very like a critical. I think that maybe that's, you know, I don't think it can be from other things, but I think that a lot of women have that critical inner voice. Because of all these, you know, cultural messages and whatever. So I feel like boys get a free pass, and they become incompetent in so many areas of their life. And it basically kind of presents itself as a challenge in marriage and when you know, a couple starts a family, because the boy didn't have to learn like so many important life skills that honestly should just be like the standard for both boys and girls. And that's where I like, even if you fall and you have a family with traditional gender roles, like we do, in that my husband does, works and I stay at home. But like my husband was raised, his dad, and I see that like my husband's grandmother, Allah yarhamha,
Okay.
his bibi, because my husband's Iraqi.
Okay.
She raised her son, it was her youngest son, to help and do these things around the house. And so my husband grew up watching his dad, like he did the grocery shopping, he did the laundry, he helped his, my husband's
Yes.
mom around the house and do these things that are just like, that was a given for him. It wasn't like, and my husband grew up in Sweden, so it's not like he saw like other families that maybe didn't. There wasn't like the Arab community that we have here, whereas like growing up, I saw that my dad was really involved in our lives, whereas that was not the case for the majority of kids that we went to school with, especially like Arab kids.
Yeah.
Like it was like the dad, shows up to maybe parent-teacher conferences, doesn't know the teacher's name, doesn't know what what his sons are doing at school.
Yeah.
Like I grew up with these boys, these Alis and Muhammads and whatever that, I mean, not to throw shade at
Yeah.
them
No,
specifically,
but
it's sad. Like it was a sad reality that they didn't have their father present in their lives. And maybe there was that resentment from the mom that the father wasn't involved in their life either. So I feel very strongly that part of where the mark is missed in this area is with the way that our boys are brought up.
You know what's interesting is the resentment part that you were talking about the mothers. It's like a lot of times the mom would go to probably tell the dad like, hey, your son is doing this, and he'll probably tell him, Turki, leave him, let him do it.
Yeah.
And that's the green light that Sheikh Mahdi was talking about. Like he can do whatever he wants, and then she leaves him, and then he's in this cycle, in this system where there is no boundaries, there is no you can't do this.
Yeah. Or just a hitting or so, like as or punishment or go automatically to punishment instead of like recognizing, okay, this behavior that like whatever, if it's a misbehavior is like a form of, like my child is communicating some need. And usually I feel like, especially like now when I reflect back on like the types of kids I went to school with, like I feel like a lot of them had unmet needs. They were just trying to get attention. They didn't have at home, honestly. And the punishment doesn't really do anything. It doesn't teach them the skill. It doesn't fill that void for them. It just tells them that like, okay, if I do this, then I can't I'm gonna be, I can't trust this adult. Yeah, I'm gonna get some like physically hurt for doing that.
I feel like a lot of these issues though with like the gender role thing is miscommunication between the girl and the boy before they get to the marriage part.
Oh, for
it's
sure.
Like I have expectations in my head and my spouse would have expectations in her head, and if we do not communicate those with each other, she's walking in the house thinking one thing, I'm walking in completely different, and then it's all out war basically in the house. So what do you think some of the questions that girls should be asking or talking about during those like crucial getting to know a person phase?
I think that like they should ask about like what their upbringing was like. How are your parents' gender role? I think that's really important actually. And how do you envision like us to be? Like how do you see yourself as a father? How do you see yourself as a husband? Like what roles and responsibilities do you feel like belong to you, and what roles do you feel like belong to me? Like if the girl is asking, and like really dig deep and figure out where those align and where they don't, and if they don't, how to kind of overcome that if that's like a problem, But I don't think people, unfortunately, don't really ask these questions.
Oh, they don't. They're very uncomfortable questions to ask.
They are, yeah.
Because if he answered you and said, well, I think that I shouldn't be doing anything around the house, and I'm just going to strictly go and make my money, and then you're going to be in the house and do all the work inside the house, she's not going to accept that between her and herself. So I think she would rather not ask that question and deal with it later.
Yeah, that's true. I know it is uncomfortable to ask, especially if you've already built like a kind of attachment to this person. Which is why it's like so hard and why probably it's important to maybe have the important conversations first before you really build this kind of, feeling towards somebody.
What do you think are some like red lines when it comes to this conversation?
About gender roles?
Yeah.
I mean, if a man thinks that his wife, shouldn't leave the house, shouldn't pursue her education, or find work. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with women working outside the house. I mean, I work, like, I have like side hustles, and I don't think there's anything wrong with like, trying to contribute to your family and bring income. As long as you both are on the same page about what like your goal is towards the betterment of your family, but like, yeah, I mean, the obvious red lines, like verbally aggressive, somebody who thinks that doing dishes is beneath them. And it's sad because like, I know of people like this, I mean, not like, or I hear it through like women. Like, men say this as a flex that, oh, I've never changed a diaper in my life. That's not like, how do you say that and not feel like shameful, Like, but it's a thing that they feel proud. Like, that's something that just the mom does. No, like, I'm sorry. Like, you're changing a diaper. It's your child too. I know some people don't like that, hearing that, but.
Somewhat how I think about it is, let's take traditional gender roles where husband works and woman is inside of the house. I talked about this. I did like a Q&A with the followers, and they asked me questions about why there's a high divorce rate. And I was saying this about gender roles, where I think if you look at the marriage as an establishment that needs to operate successfully, or like take it as a business where like it has to work, and you have two employees, you're not going to put them both as the cashiers, because it won't work if there's only two people in the store. But you would put one as a cashier, one as a stock person, where you make sure the shelves are always full and you have someone to cash out the customers, so that the roles aren't identical, but you can't say this is more important than this. They're both equally as important wise. So the equality is there. So bring it into more relatable terms inside of the household is, okay, you work outside of the house, she works inside of the house. The whole point is for the household to be operating successfully.
Yeah.
So if you come to the house and you see that, like, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. If you come to the house, and when I was going through the stories and you had like ask me questions and people were talking about this, they talk about it like in numbers a lot. Like, no, it's 1 + 1 = 2. If you come home and your wife is tired and there's still work to be done in the house, then you should help. That is what's going to make this household operate.
Yeah.
And every time I have a female guest especially on the podcast, and especially when we talk about like work inside the house, I'm always curious about their mental state, because I like thinking about it. It's very annoying. Like, that type of work is very annoying. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. I saw my mother do it. I saw my sister do it, and it's not fun. And I still live alone like for a big chunk of my life, and I have to do this work for myself. And I know how annoying it is. So if I really want this household to be positive, and I don't want my wife's mental health to deteriorate, because I feel like if the mother or the wife's mental health deteriorates, the household kind of crumbles. It's not stable.
Yeah.
Like, that's the heart of the house. So it's not black and white. It's, you come home, how can you help to make this more peaceful, to make it better? It's not as if like, oh, maybe you come home and everything that needs to be done in the house is done.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, and I have those days.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you're describing is like, once you are keeping tabs, like that's like the relationship is starting to like deteriorate a little bit. You have to have this, like, you're in it. See, the spirit that you're talking about. I mean, you use business, but I like, it's a partnership.
Exactly.
It's a partnership, and you pull your weight. You see something that needs to be done, and you do it, because that's what's going to help the house. and help your family in the long run. Like, it's not a burden on you. Like, it's not something that you do grudgingly. You do it because you want the best for your family, and that's what needs to get done at the moment. And like like alhamdulillah, I married somebody that we have that. Like, a lot of things I never told my husband. I should have probably had asked these questions that you're telling me. I just got lucky that this is how he was. I mean, and I knew he had lived by himself for a while. I feel like when men have to basically live by themselves, they're kind of forced to learn these life skills that they maybe under their parents they didn't have to learn. But we don't have this keeping tabs in my house. Some days if I can clean the house and it's I'll do it. Like, but if my focus is on the kids and it's emotionally draining, then my husband will do it. If if he's not available and the grass needs to be cut, I'll cut the grass. Like, I'll take the garbage out. I'll do the things that whatever people think are associate with like the man does them.
I feel like that's an important conversation because like you use a better word, and it's partnership, and it's okay, I'll do my part, but if my partner isn't doing the best, I'll do a little bit of their part too.
Yeah.
Like, it's why. But I think Summar, we don't have good role models when it comes to marriage. Like, I don't think, and I don't blame our parents, but they didn't do the best job as a marriage. Like I don't think there's a lot of people that look at their parents' marriage and be like, oh, I want to be like that.
No.
You know what I mean? And I think that's a big part of the reason is you said that your husband saw his dad do it. A lot of our boys don't see their father do it.
No.
And like it's disheartening because you're kind of stuck in this loop where this is going to keep happening if someone doesn't come along to change it.
Somebody has to be the cycle breaker.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know, like, I mean, we grew up hearing this. I don't know who it's, like, attributed to, but this idea that you're responsible for 7 generations. Have you ever...
No.
I don't know, like, my dad used to say that to us, and I don't know if it was, like, Islamic thing or...
You're responsible for 7 generations?
Yeah.
Wow.
That, like, the things that you do will trickle down 7 generations from now. Like, this idea, like, he would talk about it in like the context of like sadaqah jariyah and things like that, but like that things kind of live on beyond your lifetime.
Yeah.
And I really think that with parenting too, and I see it firsthand, and like in just that example of my my husband saw his dad because his mom decided to raise him differently, and my sons will see their dad and that will be their normal, that's their culture at home. And it's not a question for them. Like, that's something they're going to do. Like, that's another thing that's part of our homeschool day. After lunch, after they do their work, we do a quick roundup. That's what we call it. They have to put all their things away. We try to, like, clean up the kitchen table in the living room where we did our work back to, like, how it was in the morning. And I always tell them, like, you're part of this team, too. It's not just a partnership between us. Now, once my kids are older, it's like we're a team together.
Yes.
You like spending time with me, because they always ask me, like, Mama, do this with me. You want to spend time with me? If I'm doing this, I can't be spending time with you. So if you want, if you want me to spend time with you, like, you got to also do your part too. You took something out, put it back on the shelf so that I'm not the one having to do it.
Yeah.
So they are like, this is going to be part of their upbringing. They see their dad, they see me, they see that something that it feels nice to sit and read in a clean living room, And I always tell them that when it's clean, like, doesn't it feel nice to come in here, grab a book, and yeah, it does. Okay, so this is our standard. This is what we strive for.
That's such a cool way to think about it, that what you're going to do with your family is going to trickle down 7 generations. That puts a lot of pressure, but it's like the good type of pressure is that I do want the best for my great grandson or granddaughter. What do you think kind of I saw this in one of your posts, and it's about kids and fashion and being very simple and minimal.
Yeah.
And what's your problem with fashion?
My problem with fashion is like is in the way that it's consumed, or the way that it's like people fixate on appearances. Like, so I guess 2 things with fashion. The one is that like the cycle of clothing, the way that it is, the systems that are in place to produce this type of clothing are like exploitative. they exploit our environment. They exploit people, you know, that are like living on these just slave wages. And like we don't need to be keeping up with these things because it doesn't matter what you wear, because what matters is what's on the inside. Like that's the message that I want my kids to grow up with. Who cares about what you wear? I don't care. My kids, that's the one thing that's nice about public school, like not being in public school. My kids don't really have that like brand awareness.
Yeah.
And they get it a little bit because they play soccer and whatever, but for the most part they're not like, oh, I need to have this kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know? And then just for those two reasons, there's this like just focusing on the materialism. I don't want to raise materialistic kids. I feel like we in our Lebanese community, unfortunately, we do have like a little strand of
A little?
maybe it's not, I don't know, is it worse in Lebanon?
No, it's very bad.
Okay.
It's very bad. Like we're really tied into like the materialism. And you know what? It's not even like your child will look nice if you really find like a simple, nice outfit. They'll look very presentable. But I feel like it starts becoming like a competition. If there's, let's say we're a group of 6 families and one of the moms got them like a designer or something, and then the other mom's like, oh, I want to do it. And then 2 other moms do it, and then you feel left out. So you do it.
Yeah.
And it's not for the kid. The kid is going to look fine with or without this. But I think we're the ones that going back to like, we're the problem. Like we get caught up in this stuff. Not the kid. The kids don't know that he's gonna drop soup on the branded T-shirt like he's going to drop soup on the regular nice T-shirt. You know what I mean? So I think it's taking away from the way we're raising our kids, because now we're not focused on what's really important. Not the kid. Like the kid's learning from us. But if I'm too focused on what brand of shoes he's wearing, then of course he's going to be too.
Oh, he's gonna. That's why I said like children are. I mean, they're gonna do what you do. You're modeling for them how you want them to be, and unfortunately, a lot of parents are modeling kind of these values that are just not gonna take kids very far in life.
There's this term in psychology that I came across not too long ago. It's called the Devouring Mother, and it's kind of the mom putting the kid not in jeopardy per se, like safety wise, but mentally in jeopardy for her own benefit. And you see this a lot. And are you like, do you use social media a lot? Are you like a big consumer?
Kind of.
Okay, good. You see those videos where like the child is crying and the mother has the video right in his face, and the child just keeps crying, and he was like, and then there's something that's supposed to be funny, but in reality she's using the kid for clicks. Something recently also, which it's very funny to watch, where like they're baking together and the child's so excited, and then they crack the egg on the kid's head, and then the kid feels like almost backstabbed, like what did you just do? And then they're laughing and they're looking at the camera, and you start seeing these trends kind of pick up with mothers. And I just want to know, like, how do you feel about it? You're like using your kids for content, basically.
Oh, I am very against using kids for content. Like that is, it's a controversial topic, but I feel very strongly that kids are not content, and that was like a struggle. So when I started my blog, the Cozy Home Chronicles, I made like kind of care to, like, I wanted to be like relatable about like the struggles that I was going through, and like things that like happen, or like thoughts I had in relation to my like journey as a parent, but with respecting like my kids' privacy. But there was a struggle for me, because there was times when I realized, like, if I wanted to grow, which I'm fine with where I'm at right now, but like there are these voices that like, okay, maybe you can do this for a living, this blog, like maybe you can create content, and make money and support your family. That to do that, And like to be relatable, you need to show your kids, and you need to like expose and, you know, just like reveal all these things about them and your family life. And I just realized that I was not comfortable doing that kind of thing. And it's a really like shameful. I know people don't like using this word shame anymore, but I think like all emotions, they have their place in our life. And shame, yeah, in our maybe parents' generation and grandparents' generation, we like they overdid it with like everything's aib, and you know.
That's the.
But like here's the pendulum now. Like nothing's aib. Like what's wrong with, you know, posting your kids online? What's wrong with? And I follow this account that actually like criticizes this types of content. But like people like, you know, their kids had a potty accident, and they're like filming it instead of attending to their child, you know, and like that's aib. This is like, to me, this is aib. Like you're an adult, you're supposed to be like modeling for your child. Like they're going through like a crisis, you know, for them. Like that's something so traumatizing to them, you know, and they're looking to you as the adult, and you're acting like worse than a child. You have you're supposed to have the cognitive, you know, capacity and emotional, hopefully, you know, abilities to deal with this and help them navigate this issue. And you're filming it to embarrass them, to get likes, you know. It's shameful. I think that's shameful.
You know, there's two examples that really stand out, and it's first, it's an American family. 3 kids, the 3 of them are crying in front of and their kids, like they're young. They're crying because one kid is saying the other kid hit them and whatever, and the mother is literally just like this, filming them crying, and they're having tantrums, like they're having panic attacks in front of the camera. And then one of the kids just looks at her and says, "Can you stop recording?" And I'm like, this is a little kid.
Yeah. And
he was able to, like, they picked up that their mom is not dealing with the situation, just milking the moment for views. Yeah. And another one was, this is like Lebanese TikTok, and it was like Mother's Day, and I want to say the kid's like 7 years old, and the video starts with like the mother is sitting, obviously casually recording, and then he comes, picks up her hand and kisses it, and then says like some sort type of poetry that no 6-year-old in the world would know. And it's like, you really had like at least this 30 to 45 minute sit down with your son, telling him exactly what to do when the camera turns on. Or she'll go like hide her son under the couch with sweets and hide him with pillows, and then opens the camera like, where are you, and then she walks around the house, and then she's like, oh, you're under here, what are you doing? Oh, you're eating sweets. And it's like, this is so weird. What are you teaching your kid?
Everything's like staged. It's really creepy.
It's very weird.
But the thing is, it's not even like that is even like an extreme form of that type of content. I feel like even the day in the life, even like the showing your kids, like, and I used to like maybe show the backs of them. I've like, even then, and that was like me being like very conscious of what I was doing. I've like, if you look at my kind of like usage over time, like I've slowly kind of stopped, and I feel like very like uncomfortable now sharing more about them, especially now as they get older. But even like people that have their kids pop in their stories to like explain things and whatever, it's like, how present are you really for your child? And I felt that like when I was like in blogger mode, it's like, am I recording this like picture of them or taking this because like for me, or because I know that like, you know, am I doing it for content? You know, and it becomes like you blur that line in your life. And I felt like, okay, I can't be, there's no such thing as like a lifestyle content creator that is really like, there's no way that they're fully present for their kid.
When
like,
the camera turns off, I absolutely agree with you.
No, there's no way. So in some sense, like I know people like look forward to that content because they feel like it's relatable. But in some sense, it's not relatable because unless you're kind of neglecting your kids' needs like even when I was doing recording recipes, like you feel like okay, your kids are all over, but like bouncing around, like you're kind of like okay, be quiet, do that. Like it's not normal for them to live in that kind of environment. It's just not.
It's very unnatural.
It's very unnatural.
Is what it is. And you think of these kids that are going to, like, you mentioned that kids are sponges. Like, okay, in this moment, aside from they're seeing their parent is not attending to them, but what are they understanding from you in that moment? Is that the clicks and the likes and the shares? Because absolutely, when a video gets 100,000 views or a million views, the mom is going to make a big deal at home, come show the kid, look, you got 1 million views on TikTok or whatever. And then what are you teaching your kid? That this is the important stuff in life.
Yeah.
Us chasing views and chasing numbers is what's important. And every time you post a video, they're going to come, Mama, did this one do well? Did we get, how many views did we get this? What are people saying? And now you're showing them that what people's comments are what's important in life. How people, like what people say about you, that's what's important. Looking attractive or nice or having a nice outfit on, like this is the stuff that people like. And like this fake world is now actually your reality. And now he grows up, and the second he knows, like he hit like that age where, oh, I can get Instagram now and I can do these things and I can make these videos, and that's just you just killed your kid.
And not only that, but you also contributed to this, what you were kind of alluding to earlier about expectations versus reality. You've created these like unrealistic expectations for couples, for families, you know, for parents. Like that's not what people's lives look like. And there's a lot of neglect. Unless somebody is getting a nanny and they have like hired help, like you have to be extremely privileged. And even then it's like, no, there's for sure your child's needs are neglected. And if that's what you want, but that's not what they're portraying, you know, they're not being honest about it. And so the end product is something that is not realistic at all, but people consume that. And then they go into a marriage and think, oh, this is what it should look like. And when it doesn't match up, it's like, you know. Yeah,
it's divorce after divorce after divorce. And you know what? Another thing is you're cute for okay, maybe you're cute right now from like age 7, from age like 4 to 7 or 9 or whatever, but then you're gonna hit puberty, you're gonna get a big nose and you're gonna look ugly, and no one's gonna you know that like teenage years when like the kids look very ugly, then you're gonna look ugly and no one's going to feel like, oh, what are you gonna hold, like that's your peak moment at 7 when you got 1 million views because your mom told you to do something.
Exactly.
And then they're gonna go into like the real world and no one really cares about you like that anymore. You know, like you were just like funny for like that 10 seconds in our friend group, but then that's it. But it's not their fault, it's their mother's fault or their father's fault for doing that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I kind of like fell off a little bit and kind of really backtracked and scaled down my usage of social media, especially in front of my kids. Because now that they're older and they see me, like they're aware of what I would do and post and stuff. So I don't want them to have those ideas that this is what matters. And
like, how much would they see of your content? Like, would they see this, for example?
This? I don't know if I would show them this.
Okay.
But like, I mean, they would see me doing recipes. Like it was something, a lot of the things I was doing with them. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll share them. They'll help, you know, moms find activities. They'll kind of, you know, like I came from a good place.
Of course.
But, you know, then they would be like, oh, can I see the video when it's done? You know, they want to see the finished product.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back, like the way I created them, they'll be nice memories of our time together. But I don't want to do, like, I want to create content, but not in that way.
What's your philosophy on screen time for kids?
My philosophy on screen time? I am an advocate of being a digital mentor. So there's like different kinds of like approaches to screens and, you know, computers and that kind of stuff. I think that it's important that a parent like is empowered in the way that they approach like access to screen time and things, and they are the ones that introduce it to their child, and they introduce it with healthy boundaries. Like that's kind of been my husband and I's approach. Like when they were from 0 to 2, you know, the American Pediatric Association, whatever, doesn't recommend like screen usage. So when they were a little older, we kind of like introduced things. We would watch like Iftah Simsim. Like we would try to like find things in Arabic for them.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, like we have like we'll find like Pokemon in Arabic.
Yeah.
But so they like as they got older, like screens became a little more like part of their life. But it was still like, okay, Friday is movie night. That's like their main screen time for the week. And we introduced like in the last year, maybe last 2 years, video games. My husband likes video games.
Okay.
And I mean, I like watching him play video games. I like some games too. I just don't have the time. Like he makes time for it because it's something it's his hobby. So we decided to introduce it to our kids. We're like, if they're going to know about it,
Of course.
we're going to introduce it on our own terms, and we'll show them like what a healthy limit is. So we have our time. Saturday is game night. So we have video games that we play together. Like, it's like a 2-hour block, and we, take turns doing certain things. Like we'll play, Sonic Racing or like some of the Lego, like Star Wars or whatever. Games that we like have obviously vetted, but they like that's their time. And I feel like, to me, I don't know, maybe when I'm, older, I'll say, okay, maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. I feel like as parents, we're never going to get everything right. Just like our parents, they did the best they could with the knowledge they had. And we look back and we say, okay, here's where they went wrong. We're going to try to fix it. Maybe my kids will one day say, okay, this was, maybe this was a mistake. But I think I'm confident right now that this was the best approach. It's going to be something they're going to have, experience later on. People are going to talk about it. At least they, see it from us modeled in a hopefully healthy way that, okay, there's a time for this. Just like there's priorities in our life, we have to like prioritize, God, prayer, like taking care of yourself, these things. My husband works out, so they see like that, body, mind, soul. And then there's time for fun, So we have video games. They're allowed to play video games, and their iPad is part of it, but it's only in that time period.
Only in that 2-hour block on Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes, like, there are exceptions, like for, when we have the flu or COVID, and, we rely on sometimes screens a little more just to survive. And that's fine. I'm not against that. But, like, mostly, like, during the week, maybe, like, a 30-minute episode of something. But, like, movie night is the thing, and it's not a big part of our life. My kids are big readers. Like, when they were younger, I read to them a lot. And even at night, even when they were younger, stories like Harry Potter, Narnia, like they really enjoyed these things.
Oh, really?
So they have like a very like vivid imagination, and they love books. Like we love going to the library. They love stack of books. So that's more like the kind of feature in our house. We have in our living room, there's the TV, but there's like stacks of books, especially when we go to the library. Like usually like once every 2 weeks, we get a new haul, and they stay on these shelves. And the kids, if they're bored, they can go grab a book. Like it's okay for the kids to be bored. Like this is another thing we should talk about, like in reference to like parents kind of feeling like they need to like intervene for their kids. Like no, kids, it's actually healthy for them to be bored. It helps them with their creativity. And like our kids, they have the things in their space to like reach out to if they need to, but they're allowed to be bored and figure it out themselves.
I think like that's what, like you're almost not allowed, like bored is such a negative thing. Like you're not allowed to be bored. Yeah. Like it's, and this is so funny. Like this was a conversation like 2 days ago where we were talking about it, and it's like, yeah, like look at the wall. Like imagine like a dragon going, or like watch a movie on this blank wall. Yeah. In your mind. And I feel like we did that a lot as kids.
Oh, I was such a vivid daydreamer as a kid. Mm-hmm. Like I would just like be this, like I don't know. I would just imagine myself in all these scenarios. Like I feel like kids these days don't have that imagination because it's not nurtured, unfortunately. Like you have to be able to experience boredom. Yeah. You have to be able to experience like challenges and struggles. Like if you just like jump in right before they get through it, it's like, when like a butterfly is transforming, like that caterpillar phase, like it needs to like have that, it needs to open and break through that chrysalis to actually be able to fly it, like that process, it like pulls or like pushes the fluid or whatever. Yes. if you stop that process, like, you're going to stunt your child's growth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, boredom is a positive thing in our house.
What's one thing that we didn't talk about today that you think we should have?
Like, connection to nature, I think is really important for our children. And like, just as much as I know we talked about like the negativity of like relying on screen usage and things, I feel like, and this is part of it, our kids are not spending time outside the way that we grew up. I don't know if you did you grow up here?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Like,
8
did
years.
you spend time outside?
Yeah, I would say yeah. When we
Okay.
lived here, we used to go to the park a lot.
Okay. Like, for us, it was like, okay, after school, you're outside in the neighborhood, like running around,
Oh, absolutely.
riding bikes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not like like, I feel like now we're kind of like leaning toward like this very solitary, like, inside world.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like it's caused a lot of problems for us. And like, not just like with mental health, but like, I don't know, even things that are happening overseas. To me, I see them as interconnected. So I really feel like it's important that parents get outside with their kids, and because, you know, you have to model it for your child. You need to go outside as a parent and go on a hike, go on a walk, and just like feel comfortable. Like, just listen to the sounds of nature, the trees, the water. Like, I want my kids, like, and I've always enjoyed that. Like, I was never like, I know there's that stereotype that girls don't like to be outside. It's like, you know, the bugs and
Yeah.
whatever. I loved being outside. And I still do, and that's something that I want to like pass on to my kids, and that's why we do Friday Nature Club.
Okay.
But I really encourage parents to like just go outside and like foster that connection to nature, because a lot of the struggles that they're facing, I think will solve. It won't solve themselves.
It won't solve them directly, but I think in the long term,
yeah, in
it
the
will
long
help.
run, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Summar, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was very enjoyable.
I hope so. I hope I hadn't scared you from homeschooling.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you.